Hello everyone, Ben DeBono here to talk to you about Article 3 of Question 2 of the Prima Pars of the Summa Theologica. This article, or this question, is the question on the existence of God. We covered Articles 1 to 2 in the previous video. Today we are going to do a very rare thing for this series and cover only one article, Article 3, which will round out the question. We're doing just this article in one video because this is the article where St. Thomas presents his 5 proofs for the existence of God. It is the most famous part of the Summa Theologica, and there is a ton to cover. So I'm going to talk fast so that we don't waste any time. As usual, in the video description you will find links to the complete outline of the Summa that I'm working on, my dictionary for the Summa, and the outline that pertains to just this part. I would encourage you to open up at least that one to follow along. Otherwise, as usual, we will use my screen capture to go through my outline. Again, lots to talk about. Let's not waste any time. Let's get started and dive into Article 3 of Question 2. Let's go. Hey guys, quick note before we get into the outline itself. I forgot to press record on my screen capture when I was recording this video. So what I'm going to do instead is just place still photos of the outline to correspond with the sections I'm talking about. But if there's a few parts that where, like, I'm saying, oh, I need to collapse this part again or expand this, just ignore that. I apologize. You just won't see the motion of the outline expanding, contracting, whatever along the way, and there might be a couple of moments like that that sound a little weird, but otherwise it should all still work. So sorry about that, but let's get to the outline for real this time. Let's go. Alright, so here we are in the Prima Pars Summa Theologica. We are looking at the treatise on the one God. We are in the first section, whether God exists, question 2, the existence of God. And we'll open up this and look at the definitions in just a second. We're going to go through, let me shut these till we get to them. We're going to go through this definition of a proper cause quite a bit. We need to be really clear on what that means, because misunderstanding on that point is what leads to a lot of misunderstanding about the 5 causes. But first, what I want to do, we're going to cover this just slightly different than what we normally do. I want to look at the objections, argument from authority, and then the objections answered. And then we'll go back and look at the argument itself, because that is where St. Thomas presents his 5 causes, or his 5 proofs, excuse me. So we'll look at that individually and go through these other 3 sections quickly first. So, whether God exists. Objection 1, your typical problem of evil. There's evil in the world. God, by definition, must be infinitely good and infinitely great. Therefore, evil is incompatible with the existence of God. Classic staging of the problem of evil. Objection 2, the existence of God is superfluous, since all natural things are already accounted for by nature. All voluntary things are accounted for by human reason, so there is no need to assume there is any such being as God. Argument from authority, Exodus 3:14, I am who I am. Alright, and then we're going to get into the 5 proofs in just a second. Objections answered. God, in his infinite goodness, allows the existence of evil only to bring about further good from it. And St. Thomas quotes Augustine on this one. It's a pretty standard answer to the problem of evil. He will elaborate more on evil later on in the Summa, but for now he's just kind of, we're not treating evil in detail at this point. We're simply dealing with evil as an objection to the existence of God. And then objection number 2, nature works toward a directed end and is therefore not a sufficient ultimate origin for natural things. We'll understand why a little bit more as we go through the 5 proofs. Human reason is fallible and it's changeable, and therefore it's not a sufficient ultimate origin of voluntary things. Both nature and human reason derive from something greater. Hence, objection 2 is shot down. We still need God. Alright, let's close those up. Oops. And argument from authority, or argument, we're going to get into the 5 proofs here in just a second. What we need to discuss first is this issue of proper causes, because this is something that causes a lot of misunderstanding regarding what St. Thomas means with his 5 proofs. Now, let me explain, and we'll see this repeatedly throughout the 5 proofs. a lot of times people look at the five proofs and they argue as though, or they assume that St. Thomas is arguing for infinite regression. In other words, take the proof of motion, the first one, that we'll go through in more detail in just a second. You know, everything that is set in motion is set in motion by something else. Therefore, if we go back far enough, there must be something that moved the first thing, that then moved the second thing, and so on and so on. It's kind of like a big domino set, if you will. The first domino tips over, all the other dominoes are tipped over subsequently. Well, that's an interesting argument, but that's not the argument St. Thomas is making. In fact, if you read the five proofs carefully, you'll see that, well, he believes that he doesn't believe in infinite regression. In other words, he doesn't believe that you can just trace something back eternally, that there must be some kind of first motion. He doesn't think you can actually prove that philosophically. Okay? So instead of arguing for a dominoes type scenario here, meaning, of course, the little bricks, not the horrific pizza chain, he's arguing for God as a proper cause. And this is coming from Garrigou-Lagrange's work, a lot of what I'm about to present to you. Proper cause, it is the cause on which the effect absolutely, first of all, necessarily, and immediately depends. Let's break that down a little bit. So, first quality of a proper cause must be direct, not accidental. A direct cause would be man generates a man. A man is required to generate another man. An accidental version of that would be Socrates generates a man. Socrates is not required to generate a new man. He may be involved, but his involvement is accidental, not required. Past causes cannot be proper causes. So, a man generating a man, again, a proper cause, but that man's grandfather is an accidental clause. It's no longer a proper cause. His involvement is done. Once you generate your son, then your son's son, you are not a proper cause for him. And so this kind of right there eliminates the domino theory. Okay? In other words, if you have a chain of dominoes, the proper cause for any given domino falling over is only the domino that hits it. Any other dominoes in the preceding chain are not proper causes of the domino that is currently falling. Okay? A proper cause must be proximately or immediately required. So an animal generates a man is true, insofar as man is an animal, but not immediate. Man generates a man is immediate. We need an immediate cause that is required in a very specific way for that to be generated. So again, dominoes in general aren't causing the specific domino to fall. They're not immediate. They're not proximate enough. You know, they're too far removed to be considered proper causes. Now, when we get into proper causes, we can look at a proper cause that is a specific proper cause, and of a most specific event. So Socrates generating this man, assuming this man is the son of Socrates, is an example of a specific proper cause. Man generates man is not a specific proper cause. And of course, on the other one, the most universal cause is the proper cause of the most universal effect. So this motion can produce this movement in a specific sense, or Socrates generates this man, that's a specific proper cause, but absolute motion, as we will see, is a universal cause. So what St. Thomas is talking about is not only is he arguing that God is a proper cause, he is arguing that God is a universal proper cause. We are not concerned about the proper cause of any given specific event, we are concerned about the absolute proper causes. And then there's a difference between the proper cause of a beginning and the proper cause of being. So Socrates is the proper cause of his son's beginning. The sun is the proper cause of natural illumination's being. What's the difference there? Socrates is the proper cause of only the beginning of his son's existence, and then he ceases to be a proper cause for his son. Natural illumination, the sun is the proper cause not only of the beginning of when you go outside and stand in the sunshine, but of the ongoing presence of sunshine. And that, again, is the type of proper cause that we are arguing for with God. So just to recap before we go into the 5 proofs, we're not arguing infinite regression. Okay? We're arguing that God is a proper cause. And that means that we are arguing he's a universal proper cause. And we are arguing that he is a proper cause in the sense of being a proper cause of being, not just beginning. I know it's complicated stuff. These aren't terms a lot of us are interested in thinking in. But if we don't grasp this, at least at a basic level, we are not going to get the 5 proofs. So, feel free to kind of go through this, do a little research on your own. It's worth really getting this down before we move on to the 5 proofs. But, move on we shall. So, get into the argument. Just a few more preamble points. So, an understanding of proper cause must be had in order to grasp the 5 proofs. We already did that. St. Thomas is not arguing from infinite regression. All right. Remember at the Treatise of the One God, we talked about via causalitatis, via eminentia. So for proofs 1, 2, and 3, St. Thomas is using the method of via causalitatis. Via eminentia will come in proofs 4 and 5. The proofs are dependent upon being, not on the physical order. In other words, St. Thomas is going to use examples from the physical world to illustrate these, but nothing in the physical world, these proofs aren't dependent upon anything in the physical world. So they're not related to science. These are philosophical arguments, which is another example a lot of people make. Especially if you get caught in thinking that St. Thomas is arguing infinite regression. Then you might be able to say, well, science can explain that. Well, no, because we're not arguing about a scientific principle, whether it's science of St. Thomas's time or science of our time. We're arguing philosophy. So the proofs argue against absolute evolutionism, which would be a metaphysical stance, but not against physical evolutionism. They're neutral on the whole creation-evolution debate from a scientific standpoint, but not from a metaphysical standpoint. Okay? The proofs ascend in order of significance, and the proofs can be summed up by the general proof given by Garrigou-Lagrange. The greater does not proceed from the less, the more perfect from the less perfect, but contrary-wise. So something greater does not come from something that is less great. That's the foundational argument of the 5 proofs. All right. Let's get into themselves. The first proof, the proof from motion, or from change. Motion is created by placing something that is in a state of potentiality into a state of actuality. Everything has a state of potentiality. Before I started recording this, it has various states of potentiality, more accurately. Before I started recording this video, my video camera has the potential to have the play button pushed and start recording video. When I actually pushed the play button on the video camera, when I started recording a few minutes ago, I moved the video camera from a state of potentiality into a state of actuality. I actualized it. That which is in potentiality can only be moved into actuality by something already actualized. The video camera cannot turn on itself. Now, if by some fluke accident it does, it's because of some kind of short circuit or bug in the software that is already in the state of actuality. But something that's completely passive cannot move itself into a state of actuality. So if you have a book on your desk or something near you, that book is not just going to pick itself up and start flipping through the pages. It has the potential to do that, but it requires you or someone else or something with the capability of doing so to move it into that state of actuality. Nothing can be simultaneously potential and actual. Therefore, a being of pure act, a being with no potentiality, but that is in a state of pure actuality, is required for motion to exist. Such a being is therefore self-subsisting and worthy of being called God. And that St. Thomas is not describing a series of subsequent generations. Again, not doing infinite regression. He's describing a hierarchy of movement and potentiality. Okay, let me explain how this works in regards to the first proof. If you pick up that book that I just described on your desk, and you throw it across the room, and it hits a lamp that you have there, and then the lamp falls over, and it breaks, and maybe scratches the woodwork on your floor. We have a series of subsequent generations of movement there, starting with you picking up the book, throwing it, but then you're out of the picture at that point, okay? And so when the book strikes the lamp, you're not involved at that point. You have ceased to be involved. Your subsequent generation is over. And so on when the lamp crashes to the floor and then scratches your woodwork. However, if you do not throw the book, but you take the book and you hit the lamp with the book, you are not physically touching that lamp. But in the action of knocking it over, you are involved in a hierarchy of movement. Okay? You are involved at every stage of that. Now, of course, like all analogies, that's an imperfect analogy, but it gives you an idea of the distinction that St. Thomas is making here. All right. Causality, proof 2. Similar language, different metaphysical concept. No effect is its own cause. Each effect requires a cause. Therefore, there must be an ultimate cause under which all subsequent effects are derived. Such a cause is self-subsisting, worthy of being called God. Even with infinite regression, so in other words, even if we assume that we can have a chain of cause and effects reaching back to eternity, something is needed still to explain the subsequent effects in the infinite chain. So say you think you can establish a chain of cause and effect reaching back to eternity, hypothetically. You still haven't explained why there is such a thing as cause and effect. You still need that hierarchy of cause and effect, similar to what we saw in the proof from motion, to prove the existence of cause and effect in general. Contingency. It is possible for anything in nature to not exist. Okay? It is possible for you to not exist. It is possible for me to not exist. It is possible for your book that you just threw at the lamp to not exist. All things that we observe in the natural order have the potential of not existing. That which has the possibility or the potential of not existing cannot exist eternally. That which can only be brought into existence by something already in existence. In other words, a necessary being. There must be a necessary being who does not have the possibility of not existing. Or at this point we should say, which does not have the possibility of not existing, because we haven't proved perfect or personal God at this point. We're still talking about God in a very nominal sense, as we'll see a bit later. If there are multiple necessary beings, multiple things that it is possible for them to not exist, we're still caught with one needing to bring the others into existence, leading us to a chain of causality and subsequent conclusions of proof 2. So in other words, we could say, well, maybe there's tons of necessary beings. Well, we're still back then. We kind of back up to proof 2 and say we're then caught in that infinite chain, and there must be something to prove the existence of the chain as a whole. Therefore, there must be a necessary being who cannot or which cannot exist. This being is self-subsisting, and therefore worthy of being called God. Gradation, or the argument from perfection. And this is where we move into via eminentia from via causalitatis. So we're arguing from God's eminence for these last two. Beings possess qualities such as goodness, truth, and nobility, and other such qualities. They possess these qualities to varying degrees. Right? Those two should be considered self-evident. There is such a thing as a good person, there is such a thing as a bad person. Both Mother Teresa and Adolf Hitler possess qualities of goodness. Mother Teresa possesses a great deal more of the quality of goodness than did Adolf Hitler. It's fairly self-evident. The presence of variation within multiple of those qualities of multiple beings implies comparison to ultimate goodness, ultimate truth, ultimate nobility. Therefore, there must be a being who is the source and standard of this comparison. Okay? And note the rejection of Platonic forms there, in contrast to St. Anselm's ontological argument we talked about in the last video. So St. Anselm was kind of theorizing the Platonic heavenly forms, if you will. Whereas within the Aristotelian system that St. Thomas is using, this proof applies because there isn't a form of goodness that all things are conforming to. The forms exist in beings themselves. They don't exist in some abstract celestial world of the forms way out there beyond reality. Okay? And then this argument applies only to transcendental qualities, qualities that are above every genus, and not to accidental qualities which belong to a particular genus. So the quality of a human being's body does not apply to this proof, since that quality is accidental, which is judged against a standard within the genus of human beings. In other words, if we say, what quantifies a good human body? Well, 2 arms, 2 legs, nose, mouth, ears, the whole 9 yards. So if somebody has a good human body, and I'm not trying to, this is within a philosophical standpoint, so nothing against those with various disabilities here, of course. But we can say the standard for what a typical human body exists purely within the genus of humanity. But the quality of a human being's goodness does not apply, or does apply to this proof, since that isn't contained only in the genus of human beings, but is transcended beyond that genus and indeed from beyond all genuses. Therefore, it is a transcendental, not an accidental quality. This is something that Richard Dawkins has attacked this proof and has tried to claim that, well, you're not really saying anything because you might as well say that God is the standard of ultimate smelliness. And, this is one of my beefs with Dawkins, is that I honestly don't think he's a very smart guy, because I don't think he's properly understood this proof, or St. Thomas's as a whole, because he doesn't understand this distinction. The quality of ultimate smelliness, is going to be contained within particular genus. So if we say one human being is smellier than another, that's contained within the standard of what it means to be a smelly human being. It's not a transcendental quality. And Dawkins takes cheap shots at theologians like Aquinas, and they make for good sound bites, but when you actually dig into what St. Thomas is understanding, you realize Richard Dawkins doesn't know what the hell he's talking about 90% of the time. Or if he does, he's just being intellectually dishonest. So I apologize. I try not to bring in too much outside commentary, but that one sticks in my craw a little bit because, you disagree with St. Thomas all you want, but do it in an intellectually honest manner. And Dawkins very rarely does that on any of his arguments, including his argument against the 5 proofs. And finally, the teleological proof. All right? Things that lack intelligence in nature are still observed as acting toward an end. Okay? So non-intelligent beings, planets, whatnot, molecules, they all have something they naturally do. They have an end that they are directed towards. Things that lack intelligence and act toward an end can only do so through being directed by an intelligent being. Therefore, there must be an intelligent being who directs all things in nature toward their end. This is not an intelligent design argument, by the way, which again would rely on scientific principles. This is a philosophical argument that isn't, let's look at the complexity of the eye or something like that. It's that no, whether a non-intelligent being is complex or non-complex, we observe non-intelligent beings always acting towards a directed end. I can't explain it much better than that, and I apologize for that. This is one area where I get in over my head a little bit, there's lots of good stuff out there. I believe the author's name is Peter Freely, who writes Aquinas, A Beginner's Introduction. Wonderful book, and I'd recommend that. He spends a lot of time on the 5 proofs and on this issue in particular, as does Garrigou-Lagrange. Both of them will help you understand in more detail that distinction that I'm presenting very, very minorly there about the difference between the teleological argument and the intelligent design arguments. Again, that doesn't mean that intelligent design is or isn't true. It's just what we saw before. We're not making a scientific argument. We're neutral on the subject of scientific evolutionism, physical evolutionism. We're arguing against metaphysical evolutionism, which would say all things came about by chance. Okay? All right. So that is it on the 5 proofs. Alright everyone, so I think you can see why I made this its own video. Hopefully most of the questions will go a little bit quicker than question 2, where we spend all this time on just 3 articles. But this is important stuff. It's a very famous passage. I don't want to skimp on the time. So next time, we're going to move on to question 3. Question 3 has 8 articles. We're going to go through 1 through 4 in one video, and then 5 through 8 in the next. So I'll be back with that in a couple of days. Until then, enjoy reading the Summa. I'll see you later. Goodbye.